If only she knew that the life she was trying so hard to show the world would one day stand in front of her and ask her to pay the full price. Some friendships are destiny. Some are lessons. And some are warnings we ignore until it's too late. This is not just a story about friendship. It's a story about image, pressure, truth, and consequences. You are watching Tales by Lymarh. Please like, share, and subscribe. The NYSC orientation camp stood quietly under the early morning sun, its dusty parade ground glowing softly as hundreds of young graduates dragged their boxes and dreams into a new chapter of life. For many, it was just compulsory service. For others, it was escape. And for a few, it was the beginning of a story they would never forget. Aisha Bello stepped down from an old bus, gripping her worn backpack tightly to her chest. Her eyes scanned the camp nervously, taking in the sea of unfamiliar faces, the echoing voices, the sharp whistles of soldiers barking instructions. She inhaled deeply. "This is it," she whispered to herself. Aisha was from the north. Her mother was a widow who sold akra by the roadside, waking up before dawn every day just to make sure there was food on the table. Life had never been soft on Aisha, but it had taught her something priceless: gratitude and restraint. Her clothes were neat but simple. Her phone was basic. Her confidence came quietly, not loudly. As she struggled with her luggage, a sleek black car pulled up nearby. Heads turned instantly. Out stepped Damilola Adeyemi. Perfect hair. Designer sunglasses. A polished suitcase that looked like it had traveled the world. She removed her shades slowly, her lips curved into a practiced smile as she glanced around, already aware that eyes were on her. Damilola was Yoruba, from the south. And according to her, she was used to comfort. Finally, she muttered, checking her phone. Network here better not be terrible. But what nobody knew, what Aisha could never have guessed, was that Damilola's life was carefully curated. Her family was comfortable, yes, but not the kind of comfortable she presented online. The clothes were borrowed. The phone was bought on credit. The lifestyle was a performance. Fate pushed them together that first day, same platoon, same hostile line, same confused look when instructions became overwhelming. Aisha offered help first. "Do you need water?" she asked gently. Damilola looked surprised, then smiled. "Oh, thank you. You're so kind." That simple moment sparked a connection. They talked. They laughed. They bonded over the stress of camp life. And just like that, a friendship was born. Neither of them knew that this friendship would soon test truth, loyalty, and identity in ways neither was prepared for. By the third day in camp, Aisha and Damilola were inseparable. They woke up together for morning drills. They shared food when rations were small. They whispered stories at night when the hostel lights went out. But beneath the laughter, their worlds could not have been more different. Aisha spoke proudly of her mother. "My mum wakes up by 4 a.m. every day," she said one evening. "She sells akra till her hands hurt. Everything I am is because of her." Her voice carried respect, gratitude, love. Damilola listened, nodding, but said little. When it was her turn to speak, she painted a picture. "My dad travels a lot," she said casually. "My family is very private. We're not really loud." What she didn't say was that her father struggled to keep his small business afloat. What she didn't say was that her mother counted expenses carefully every month. Online, Damilola was different. Luxury captions. Soft-filtered selfies. Quotes about soft life. In camp, she kept it going. She wore the best outfits on casual days. She spoke confidently about places she had only seen on social media. She made life sound effortless. Aisha admired her, not with envy, but curiosity. "You carry yourself so well," Aisha said once. "I like that." Damilola smiled, but inside, pressure tightened its grip. Because the more she pretended, the harder it became to stop. As camp activities intensified, so did Damilola's lifestyle. She started skipping meals, saving money to maintain appearances. She avoided calls from home. She borrowed, promised, delayed. Aisha noticed. "You don't eat much," she said gently. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Damilola replied quickly. "I just don't like camp food." But late at night, when Aisha slept peacefully, Damilola lay awake, scrolling, comparing, calculating. "I can't look poor. Not now. Not here." One evening, an invitation came, an exclusive hangout outside camp, whispered about like a secret. Damilola's eyes lit up. "This is my kind of life," she said excitedly. Aisha hesitated. "Is it safe?" Damilola laughed. "You worry too much." That was the moment. The moment a line quietly formed between them. Aisha chose caution. Damilola chose image. And somewhere between that choice, the price of a lifestyle began to rise. If only she knew that every step she took away from truth was one step closer to a cost she could never undo. The first week of NYSC camp always had a strange rhythm. Mornings were loud and exhausting, whistles cutting through sleep, boots hitting the dusty ground, voices counting in unison. Afternoons dragged under the sun. Nights were quiet, heavy with thoughts no one said out loud. By the fifth day, Aisha and Damilola had settled into a routine. They queued together. They matched steps during drills. They shared stories while folding uniforms on their bunks. To Aisha, camp was simple. Not easy, but honest. She woke up grateful. She slept tired but peaceful. To Damilola, camp was a stage. Every day felt like she was being watched, judged, measured. She made sure her uniform fit perfectly. She borrowed accessories to stand out on casual days. She spoke confidently, even when she felt unsure. People noticed. "You have steez," someone told her one afternoon. She smiled, but inside, her heart raced. "This is working," she thought. "I can't stop now." Aisha noticed how often Damilola's phone buzzed, messages she read quickly, then ignored. How she laughed loudly in public, but went quiet at night. One evening, as they sat outside their hostel watching the sky darken, Aisha spoke softly. "Do you ever feel like you're pretending to be strong when you're tired?" Damilola froze for half a second. Then she laughed. "You think too much." But later that night, when the hostel was silent, Damilola stared at the ceiling, replaying those words. Because pretending had started to feel heavy. By the second week, camp friendships had begun to form clearly. There were the loud ones, the quiet ones, the popular ones. And somehow, Damilola found herself among the admired. People gathered around her. They asked questions. They assumed things. "Your parents must be very comfortable," someone said casually. Damilola nodded. Yes. That single word locked her deeper into a story she could no longer escape. Aisha watched from a distance. She wasn't jealous. She wasn't bitter. She was worried. One afternoon, Aisha noticed Damilola counting money quietly, her hands trembling slightly. "Are you okay?" Aisha asked. Damilola smiled too quickly. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. She had borrowed money to maintain her image. She had promised repayments she didn't know how to meet. She had begun saying yes to invitations she didn't fully understand. Still, she kept smiling. One night, Aisha prayed quietly on her bunk, asking for strength and direction. On the opposite bunk, Damilola scrolled endlessly, comparing her life to curated images on her screen. 2 girls. Same room. Different battles. Neither realized how close they were to a turning point. The final week of camp arrived quietly, like a warning no one wanted to hear. The excitement of passing out parade filled the air. Plans were being made. Connections were being exchanged. But beneath it all, Damilola felt something she couldn't shake: fear. Her lifestyle had attracted attention. Expectations had risen. And now, people wanted more. More presents. More spending. More proof. One evening, she sat alone, staring at her phone, unread messages piling up. Aisha approached slowly and sat beside her. "You've changed," Aisha said gently. "Not in a bad way, just different." Damilola swallowed hard. For the first time since camp began, her smile cracked. "I'm just tired," she whispered. Aisha didn't push. She didn't judge. She just sat there. That quiet moment, more powerful than words. Because somewhere deep inside Damilola, a realization was forming. She had created a version of herself she could no longer sustain. And the camp gates would soon open. When they did, life would no longer be controlled. Choices would no longer be harmless. If only she knew that what followed after camp would test everything she had built on appearance. The final morning at camp arrived with mixed emotions. Joy, relief, and fear. The parade ground buzzed with excitement as corpers packed their bags, exchanged contacts, and posed for last-minute photos. Laughter echoed everywhere, but beneath it all was uncertainty. For Aisha, the end of camp felt like a quiet victory. She had survived. She had learned discipline. She had made a genuine friend. For Damilola, it felt like stepping off a stage, and realizing there was no script for what came next. As the bus engines roared to life, Aisha adjusted her bag and smiled. "We did it," she said softly. Damilola smiled back, but her eyes were distant. She had spent the last night awake, thinking. Camp had protected her in a strange way. Everyone was equal there. Everyone wore the same uniform. But now, reality was waiting. They hugged tightly before parting ways. "Let's keep in touch," Aisha said sincerely. "Of course," Damilola replied. "We're friends for life." But even as she said it, Damilola felt something shift. Because after camp, friendships change. Posting began almost immediately. Damilola posted photos from camp, editing them carefully. New chapter. Growth season. Likes poured in. Comments followed. Aisha watched quietly from her modest room at home, smiling at the screen. She was back with her mother now. Helping fry akara in the early mornings. Listening to stories in the evenings. Saving money carefully. Life was simple again, and she was at peace. Damilola's life, however, became louder. She didn't return home immediately. Instead, she stayed with a friend in the city. She wanted to explore. What that really meant was this. She didn't want anyone to see the gap between her online life and her real one. Bills began to pile up. Promises began to stretch thin. But her posts became even more polished. Because now, more people were watching. And once people believe a story, they expect you to keep telling it. Weeks passed. Aisha called often. "How are you settling in? Have you gotten your posting letter? Are you okay?" Damilola answered vaguely. I'm good. Just busy. Everything is fine. But everything wasn't fine. One evening, Damalola sat alone in a dim room, staring at her phone, heart racing. A message popped up, an invitation. Not a bad one. But one she accepted for the wrong reason. Because she needed money. Because she needed to maintain an image. Because saying no felt impossible now. Meanwhile, Aisha was praying. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly asking for protection. For herself. For her friend. Because sometimes, concern shows up before danger does. Life has a way of slowing down right before it teaches its hardest lesson. For Damalola, the noise eventually faded. The constant notifications. The excitement of being noticed. The thrill of being admired. One by one, the people who once praised her disappeared. The invitations stopped. The calls went unanswered. What remained was silence. A silence loud enough to force her to finally listen to herself. She sat alone in a small room one evening, staring at the same mirror she once used to rehearse smiles for pictures. But this time, there was no filter. No caption. No audience. Just truth. Her phone buzzed. A message from Aisha. I've been thinking about you. I hope you're okay. Damalola stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I'm not. That was the first honest thing she had said in months. They spoke that night, slowly, carefully. Damalola didn't explain everything. She didn't need to. Aisha listened without interrupting, without judgment. I was trying to be someone I thought people would respect, Damalola admitted, her voice shaking. I didn't know it would cost me this much. Aisha's response was calm. Sometimes, she said, we don't lose because life is unfair. We lose because we forget who we are. Damalola cried quietly after that call, not because of what she lost, but because she finally understood why she lost it. She had confused attention for value. Image for identity. Approval for peace. And life had collected its price. Slowly, she began again. Not loudly. Not online. She returned home. Faced her parents. Accepted help. It wasn't easy. But it was real. Aisha, on the other hand, continued her quiet journey. She got her posting. She served faithfully. She supported her mother. Her life didn't look flashy. But it felt solid. When the service year ended, the two girls met again, older, wiser, changed. This time, there was no performance between them. Just truth. They hugged. Not as the girls they once pretended to be. But as the women they had become. And somewhere between that hug and the silence that followed, one truth became clear. Life will always reveal what we hide. And peace only comes when we stop pretending. Moral of the story. Not every lifestyle is real, and not every real life needs to be shown. Trying to impress people at the cost of your truth will always demand a painful payment. Contentment, honesty, and self-acceptance are richer than any image you try to sell. A quiet life built on truth will always outlast a loud life built on lies. Sometimes, the cost of a lifestyle is not money. It's peace. It's relationships. It's identity. If this story touched you, remember this. You don't need to look rich to be valuable. You don't need to impress anyone to be enough. Live your truth. Protect your peace. And never forget who you are trying to become. Thank you for watching Tales by Lymarh. If this story spoke to you, like, share, and subscribe. Because more stories are coming, and the next one might be the lesson someone needs today.